the Omega saved 11 wolves from certain death, unaware that one was the Alpha. Caliph moved carefully among the shadows, her cloak brushing the icy ground as she went. She had learned long ago that being quiet was survival. The forest was no friend to strangers, and she had long been a stranger. Caliph had once known a life in a village, where children laughed under the sun and the river sang its steady song. But that life had been stolen. Betrayal, fear, and whispered rumors had forced her into exile. Now she wandered alone, a healer without a home, carrying only her satchel of herbs and her small knife for protection. Yet, despite her hardships, her heart remained soft. Compassion was a dangerous thing in a cruel world, but it was all she had left. As she moved deeper into the forest, a faint sound reached her ears. It was not the wind nor the cry of a distant owl. It was softer, uneven, and full of pain. Caliph paused, listening, her brow furrowed. Wolves, wolves in trouble. She had seen many creatures in the forest, but the sound of suffering stirred something deep inside her. Following the sound carefully, Caliph stumbled upon a clearing. The moonlight revealed a scene that made her heart tighten. 11 wolves lay on the frozen earth, some limping, others pressed low to the ground, eyes half closed. Their fur was matted with blood, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of injury. Among them, one wolf sat taller than the rest, its eyes a sharp gold that seemed to burn even in the dim light. The animal did not flee when she stepped closer. Instead, it watched her with a strange intelligence, a weight in its gaze that unsettled her. Caliph knelt slowly, careful not to startle them. "It's okay," she whispered, reaching into her satchel for the bandages and herbs she carried. "I won't hurt you." The wolves flinched, but hunger and weakness kept them from running. Caliph's hands moved swiftly, washing wounds with water she had heated over her small portable flame. She applied healing salves and bandages, murmuring soothing words that felt like a spell. Hours passed, and the night grew colder, yet she did not stop. She knew that to leave them would mean certain death. Even a little warmth, a little kindness could give them a chance. The wolf with the golden eyes, the one who watched her so closely, stood and circled her. Caliph's heart raced. It was enormous, with muscles that flexed under his fur, and yet there was a cautious patience in his movement. He lowered his head slightly, as if testing her intentions. "You're strong," she said softly, her breath misting in the cold air. "But even strength isn't enough alone. You need care like everyone else." A shiver ran through the wolf, and for a moment Caliph thought it might attack her. Then, as quickly as the thought came, it passed. The golden-eyed wolf returned to its place near the others, lying down with a low, rumbling growl, not of anger but of warning. Protectiveness, Caliph realized, instinctive and proud. Hours blurred into silence. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them, the trees bending as if to watch the small miracle unfolding. Caliph's hands were raw, her fingers stiff, but she ignored the pain. She hummed a quiet tune, one she remembered from childhood as she worked. One by one, the wolves received her care. One had a deep gash across its shoulder, another had a twisted leg, but by the time she finished, each had been tended to as best as she could manage. The golden-eyed wolf, however, did not relax. It watched her until exhaustion finally claimed her. Caliph leaned against a tree, eyes heavy, her cloak damp with frost and sweat. For the first time in many nights, she allowed herself to close her eyes. A low sound woke her, the soft padding of paws on frozen leaves. Her eyes snapped open. The golden-eyed wolf stood over her, close enough that she could see the sharp lines of its snout and the steady rhythm of its breathing. It tilted its head, staring with a gaze that seemed almost human in its intensity. Caliph froze. You're not like the others, are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The wolf cocked its head again as if understanding her words. The forest seemed to hold its breath. A cold wind rustled the trees, and Caliph felt the hair on her arms stand. There was something about this wolf, something ancient, commanding, and frighteningly intelligent. Yet there was also a vulnerability, a hint of pain behind those golden eyes. She could not look away. Suddenly, the wolf shifted. Its form shimmered in the moonlight, as if the very air around it had thickened and pulsed. Caliph blinked and gasped. The creature she had thought a wolf was no longer entirely wolf. Its body elongated, muscles rippling, and with a flash of light, the wolf began to stand upright. Before her stood a man, tall and regal even in the shadows, with golden eyes that had belonged to the wolf. His hair was dark and wild, and there was a strength in his shoulders, a pride in the set of his jaw. Yet his eyes, those eyes held a deep, unspoken sorrow. Caliph stumbled back, her heart racing. What are you?" she breathed. "I am," his voice was low, rich, and commanding. "I am Aaron." The name felt like thunder in the silence. Caliph had no reason to trust him, and yet she felt a pull, an inexplicable connection that made her knees weak. "Aaron," she repeated, testing the sound of it. "Yes," he said, his gaze never leaving hers. "And you saved me, all of us." Caliph shook her head, confusion and fear mingling with awe. I didn't know. I thought you were just wolves. I didn't know." Aaron stepped closer, each movement deliberate like a predator studying prey. But his eyes betrayed no malice, only a complex mix of curiosity and something softer, something like longing. "Most would have left us to die," he said quietly. "But you chose mercy." Caliph swallowed. "I couldn't leave you," she admitted. "Even if it was dangerous, I couldn't." For a long moment neither spoke. The cold air pressed against them, the forest listening to their silent exchange. Then Aaron finally nodded, a shadow of a smile brushing his lips. "Then perhaps mercy is a rare kind of courage." Caliph felt her heart skip. Courage. She had thought herself weak for years, an exile, a wanderer with no place in the world. But here, in the middle of the cursed forest, with 11 wolves saved and one man, one incredible man, standing before her, she realized that her heart had not failed her. Yet fear remained. She knew nothing of this man, this Aaron. His transformation, his power, it frightened her. And she knew that the forest itself could turn cruel at any moment. Danger was never far. "I need to know," she said finally, her voice trembling, "what you are truly." Aaron looked at her, eyes golden, full of secrets. "I am more than a wolf," he said, his words heavy with unspoken history. "I am cursed. I'm a king in chains, bound by magic and treachery. And now you have found me." Caliph's breath caught. "A king," she whispered. You were a king," he nodded slowly. "Once. And perhaps I shall be again, but not without help, and not without danger." The weight of his words settled over her. She had saved 11 wolves without knowing their true nature. Now she had saved a king, a man of power, a being who carried curses and history in his blood. And she, an exile, an outcast, stood before him, her hands raw, her heart racing, utterly unprepared for what was to come. For the first time, Caliph wondered if her life would ever be the same again. And then, as if the forest itself sensed the shift, a distant howl pierced the night. A warning, a challenge, a promise of danger to come. Caliph looked at Aaron. His golden eyes were sharp, alert, alive with the fire of his true nature. He reached out a hand, not threatening but commanding in its presence. "Stay close," he said softly. "Tonight we survive. Tomorrow we begin to fight." Caliph swallowed her fear, nodding. The forest was vast, dark, and alive with secrets, and she was no longer alone. But as she gazed at Aaron, standing tall and proud, the thought struck her. What had she truly stumbled into? She had saved 11 wolves, yes, but among them was a king, and the forest's darkness was only beginning to stir. The night held its breath. And Caliph held hers. The moon hung high over the forest, its silver light spilling through the branches and painting the snow in ghostly patterns. Caliph walked beside Aaron, her steps careful on the frost-hardened ground. Each breath made small clouds in the cold air, and every sound, the crack of a branch, the whisper of wind, seemed amplified in the silence. She could feel the tension in the air. Aaron moved like a shadow beside her, silent, alert, his golden eyes scanning the trees as though he could see threats in the darkness that she could not. Though he had taken human form, there was still a wildness in him, a raw power that reminded her that he was more than any man she had ever known. "You need to rest," she said softly, breaking the silence. Her voice carried more concern than command, but Aaron's gaze shifted to her, and she saw an expression that made her pause. "I do not rest," he said quietly. "Not yet. There are dangers in these woods that wait for any weakness. Sleep can wait." Calith's fingers tightened around the strap of her satchel. "Even a king needs rest." Aaron's lips curved into the smallest hint of a smile. It did not reach his eyes. "I am no longer a king in the lands I once ruled," he said, voice low, almost bitter. "I am a shadow bound by curses and betrayals. Rest is a luxury I cannot afford." Calith hesitated. She had always believed in the power of mercy, of kindness, yet here was a man, a being of immense power, speaking of curses and chains that even she could not see. And still she felt a pull toward him, an inexplicable connection that made her heart pound. The path ahead was dark, twisted with roots and ice, and Calith stumbled on a hidden stone. Aaron's hand shot out before she could fall, strong and warm, gripping her arm with a force that startled her. "You must be careful," he said, his golden eyes sharp in the moonlight. "Even the smallest mistake can be fatal here." "I can handle myself," she replied, though her voice lacked conviction. Aaron's gaze lingered on her, intense and unreadable. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "but strength alone does not save lives. Understanding, foresight, these are more valuable than any blade." Calith lowered her gaze, unsure if his words were a warning or a lesson. They walked in silence for hours, the forest alive with quiet whispers. Somewhere in the distance, a branch cracked sharply, and Calith froze, instinctively pressing herself against Aaron's side. The wolves she had saved were nearby, shadows flitting between the trees, their eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. "They follow us," she whispered. "All of them, the ones I healed." Aaron's lips twitched almost imperceptibly. "They are loyal, yes," he said. "But loyalty can be twisted. One wrong step, and even the kindest heart can be used against you." Calith swallowed hard. She had spent years learning that kindness was dangerous, that the world rewarded cruelty over compassion. Yet she had saved those wolves, and she would do it again. Even if Aaron's words carried truth, she could not turn away from what she knew to be right. Eventually, they reached the ruins of an old castle, half buried in snow and ice. Its towers were crumbled, walls scarred by long-forgotten battles. The place smelled of cold stone and forgotten history. Aaron paused at the entrance, scanning the shadows with a predatory grace. "This was my home once," he said softly, voice tinged with sorrow. "Before the curse, before betrayal, I ruled here, and yet, now it is nothing but a memory." Calith looked at the ruins, feeling the weight of centuries pressing down through the stones. "It's beautiful in a strange way," she said, though her voice faltered. "Even in ruin, there is strength here." Aaron's golden eyes met hers, intense and piercing. "Strength can be hidden," he said, "even in the smallest, weakest creatures, even in an exile wandering through the forest. Do not underestimate yourself, Calith." Her heart skipped. No one had ever spoken to her with such clarity, as though they could see the parts of her that even she tried to hide. She wanted to look away, to retreat into safety, but she found herself drawn to his gaze, captivated despite the fear curling in her stomach. Inside the ruins, the air was warmer, though heavy with the scent of old stone and magic that lingered like a shadow. Aaron moved with silent precision, touching walls as if reading them, listening to the echoes of the past. Calith followed, keeping close. She could feel the wolves at the edges of the ruins, their presence a quiet reassurance. Suddenly, a sound echoed through the hall, sharp, deliberate, and terrifying. The air shifted, carrying the scent of danger. Calith's hands went to her satchel instinctively. Aaron's posture stiffened, muscles coiling like a spring. "They are here," he said, voice a low growl. "Hunters, magical hunters, they have tracked the wolves and us." Calith's heart pounded. "We have to hide?" she asked, fear prickling her skin. "No," Aaron said firmly, his golden eyes blazing. "We will fight, and you will stay close, trust me." The wolves shifted, low growls rumbling through the stones. Calith felt the weight of their loyalty, and it strengthened her resolve. She had saved them, and now they would not be abandoned, not while she still drew breath. The hunters appeared at the entrance, cloaked figures that moved like shadows. Their eyes glinted with cruel intent, and their hands gripped weapons that hummed with magic. Aaron stepped forward, towering and commanding, his presence radiating a dangerous calm. Calith's instincts screamed at her to run, yet she remained rooted, unable to tear her gaze from him. Aaron's eyes met hers once, and she saw something unspoken: trust, warning, and something more. He was not just a warrior, he was a protector, a force she could not hope to fully understand. Without a word, Aaron moved. His body shifted fluidly, powerful, controlled. The wolves leapt into action, moving as one with precision that spoke of ancient training and loyalty. Calith ducked instinctively as a hunter lunged forward, narrowly missing her. Aaron's hand moved like lightning, and the attacker was sent tumbling to the ground, stunned but not harmed. The battle was brief but intense. Calith watched, heart hammering, as Aaron fought with a mixture of human strength and something wilder, almost otherworldly. The hunters faltered, realizing too late that they had underestimated the cursed king and the creatures loyal to him. When the last hunter had fled, silence returned. Calith's knees weakened, and she sank to the floor, breathing hard. Aaron stood beside her, chest heaving, golden eyes scanning the forest for any sign of further danger. "You are unharmed," he said finally, voice calm but firm. "That is what matters, but you must understand this is only the beginning. Those who seek to destroy us will not stop. And there are others more dangerous than these hunters." Calith nodded, fear and awe mingling in her chest. I can help," she said quietly. "I may not be strong, but I can heal, I can fight if I must." Aaron's eyes softened just slightly. "Your courage surprises me," he said. "Few would dare face such danger willingly. Few would risk themselves for others." She looked at him, her heart beating fast. I did what I could. I couldn't let them die, not the wolves, not you." Aaron studied her, the golden fire in his eyes tempered by something deeper, more fragile. "Then perhaps you are stronger than you know," he said. For a moment the ruins were still, the cold air sharp against their skin. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them, as if acknowledging the bond forming between the exile and the cursed king. Calith felt a strange mixture of fear, longing, and hope. She had entered the forest alone, and now, beside Aaron, she felt something new, a sense of purpose, a connection, and a dangerous, thrilling pull toward the man who was no ordinary being. And yet, danger still lingered. The hunters were only the beginning. Forces older, darker, and far more cunning than they had imagined were moving in the shadows. Calith could feel it in her bones. The forest was alive, watching, waiting. And soon it would test them both in ways they could not yet foresee. A distant howl echoed through the ruins, chilling Calith to the bone. She looked at Aaron. His expression was unreadable, a mask of strength and command, yet his golden eyes betrayed a hint of concern. "Tomorrow," he said quietly, "we must prepare. The world outside these ruins is not safe, and there are truths you have yet to learn, truths about me, about the curse, and about what it truly means to save a king." Calith's chest tightened. She had saved 11 wolves, one of them a king, and now she was standing at the edge of a storm she could barely understand. The forest seemed to close in around them, cold and vast, filled with secrets and dangers. She nodded, steeling herself. "I will stay. I will face it." Aaron's gaze softened, just for a heartbeat, and then he turned, moving toward the inner hall of the ruins. Calith followed, feeling the weight of the night pressing on her. They were no longer merely healer and wolf. They were allies in a dangerous, magical world. And as the first light of dawn touched the icy stones, Caliph realized that nothing in her life would ever be simple again. The forest whispered around them, carrying secrets of kings, curses, and power. And somewhere in the shadows, eyes watched, waiting for the moment to strike. Caliph swallowed her fear and followed Aaron deeper into the ruins, unaware that the next trial would test not only her courage, but the very bond forming between them, a bond that could change both of their fates forever. The forest beyond the ruins was silent and heavy, as though holding its breath. The snow had deepened overnight, muffling the sound of footsteps and giving the world a fragile, unreal quality. Caliph followed Aaron closely, her boots crunching softly against the frost. The wolves moved ahead and behind them, shadows among shadows, their glowing eyes reflecting the silver of the moon. Caliph's hands itched to tend the wounds the wolves still carried, but she knew that now was no time for rest. Aaron had said it clearly. The forest was alive with danger and their path was uncertain. Yet, as she walked beside him, she noticed how his golden eyes constantly scanned the woods, how every movement was precise, deliberate. There was a strength in him that made her feel both safe and small, as though the forest itself had shifted its weight toward him. "You've grown stronger," Aaron said suddenly, his voice low but carrying in the still air. "Not in body, but in spirit." Caliph glanced at him, unsure if he was complimenting her or warning her. "Stronger," she echoed. "I still feel like I barely know how to survive." "Survival is more than knowing where to step or how to avoid a blade," Aaron said. "It is understanding the world and your place in it. You have mercy, courage, and patience. That is strength few possess." Caliph's heart fluttered at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even in her village, not in years of wandering alone. She wanted to respond, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she nodded, her breath visible in the cold night. Their journey took them to a narrow river, partially frozen. Ice covered the edges and the water ran dark and fast beneath it. Aaron stopped, his eyes narrowing. "We must cross," he said, his voice steady, though his posture remained tense. "The path beyond is safer, but the river is a test. Magic lingers here, I can feel it." Caliph looked at the icy water, fear crawling up her spine. "What kind of magic?" she asked quietly. "Old magic," Aaron said. "The kind that does not forgive weakness. The kind that can hide in water, trees, or even in shadows. Step wrong, and it may take more than your life." Caliph swallowed hard, gripping her satchel. The wolves stirred behind her, growls rumbling low in their throats. They were alert, protective, and somehow aware that this crossing was more than a simple river. It was a barrier between what they were and what they were about to face. Aaron moved first, testing the ice with his foot. The surface shivered beneath his weight but held firm. He held out his hand to Caliph. "Trust me," he said. Caliph hesitated, then placed her hand in his. The warmth of it surprised her, a stark contrast to the icy river below. She followed his careful steps, feeling the strange mixture of fear and trust settle in her chest. Halfway across, the ice groaned and Caliph froze. Aaron's hand tightened around hers. "Keep moving," he whispered. "Do not panic, focus." Step by step, they made it to the other side. Caliph's legs trembled, but she held herself upright. The wolves followed without hesitation, moving as a united force. Once on solid ground, Aaron released her hand, and for a moment they simply breathed together in the quiet of the forest. "You are brave," he said, his golden eyes locking on hers. "Bravery is not absence of fear, it is acting despite it." Caliph's heart swelled, a mix of pride and something warmer that she could not name. Yet she knew this moment of calm would not last. Danger was never far in this forest. As they continued, they came to an ancient grove, its trees twisted into unnatural shapes. Shadows clung to the branches like webs, and the air hummed with unseen energy. Aaron's step slowed. His eyes narrowed, and Caliph felt the weight of his presence like a shield around her. "This place," he said softly, "was once a site of power. Before the curse, kings and sorcerers gathered here. It is dangerous, but it may hold the answer to breaking my chains." Caliph looked around, awe mixing with apprehension. The grove seemed alive, almost sentient, as if it were watching them, judging them. She shivered, not from cold, but from the sense that they were intruding in a place older than memory. "Be ready," Aaron whispered, his voice a low rumble. "The magic here tests hearts as much as it tests strength." They stepped deeper into the grove, and the air shifted. The wolves formed a protective circle around them, growling softly. Then, without warning, a figure appeared, a shadow tall and thin, eyes glinting with cold fire. It moved like smoke, silent and deadly. "Who dares enter my grove?" the figure hissed, voice like broken glass. Aaron stepped forward, chest rising and falling steadily. "We seek answers, nothing more," the shadow laughed, a sound that made Caliph's blood run cold. "Answers, answers come with a price. Are you willing to pay?" Caliph felt fear coil in her stomach, but Aaron's hand brushed her arm, grounding her. "Trust me," he whispered. She nodded, drawing courage from his calm. The shadow circled them, moving faster than the eye could follow. Caliph noticed the way it studied her, and a chill ran down her spine. "Why me?" she whispered. "Why look at me like that?" Aaron's eyes did not leave the shadow. "Because," he said quietly, "you are more than you realize. The grove senses that. It tests not just me, but you as well." The shadow halted, and for a heartbeat everything froze. Then, with a flick of its hand, the air shimmered. Shapes of fire and light emerged, forming illusions of wolves and men, twisted versions of reality. Caliph's heart raced as she saw herself trapped, struggling to heal creatures that were distorted and monstrous. "Do not fear," Aaron said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Focus on what is real, what is true, trust yourself." Caliph closed her eyes, drawing on the lessons she had learned. Compassion, courage, patience. Step by step, she reached toward the illusions, touching them with the warmth of her hands. Slowly, the images dissolved, melting into sparks of light that drifted to the ground. The shadow hissed, its form flickering. "You survived the first test," it said, "but survival is not enough. The next test will pierce your heart." Aaron's jaw tightened. "Then we face it together." Caliph looked at him, and for the first time she saw not just power but vulnerability. Beneath the golden eyes and commanding presence, there was a man who had suffered, who had lost everything. She wanted to reach for him, to offer comfort, but she did not dare. Instead, she nodded, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The shadow vanished, leaving the grove silent once more. Caliph and Aaron stood together, the wolves around them, the weight of the forest pressing close. Neither spoke for several minutes, both listening to the quiet as though the grove itself was breathing with them. "You are remarkable," Aaron said finally, voice low. "Few can face that test and not falter. You give me hope." Caliph felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the fire of the illusions. "Hope?" she asked softly. "Yes," Aaron said. "Even a cursed king can find hope in the courage of another. Even someone exiled can become a force that changes fate." Her heart fluttered. She had never felt so seen, so acknowledged, not for what she could do, but for who she was. And yet, as much as she felt drawn to him, fear remained. The shadow's words echoed in her mind. "The next test will pierce your heart." They made camp in the grove, the wolves curled around them for warmth. Aaron kept watch, his eyes scanning the trees, while Caliph tended the small fire. She stole glances at him, noticing the tension in his shoulders, the weight he carried. He was a king, a warrior, a cursed soul, and somehow she felt connected to him in a way she could not explain. As sleep began to claim her, Caliph thought of the shadow, of the trials they had survived, and of the unknown dangers ahead. She wondered if she was ready for what was to come. And somewhere deep inside, a small, undeniable spark of trust and longing grew, a bond forming between the healer and the cursed king, stronger than fear, stronger than the forest itself. Outside, the trees whispered in the wind, carrying secrets of magic, kings, and destiny. And as the moon cast its silver glow on the grove, Caliph and Aaron rested side by side, unaware that the trials ahead would test not just their courage, but the fragile bond that had begun to grow in the fire and moonlight of the enchanted forest. The forest was restless that morning. A low wind whispered through the trees, carrying scents Caliph could not name. The snow, once soft and serene, had hardened into brittle ice that cracked underfoot. Every shadow seemed alive, and every rustle made her heart skip. She adjusted her cloak and glanced at Aaron, who moved with his usual precision, golden eyes scanning the trees with relentless focus. "We are close," Aaron said quietly. His voice carried a weight that made Caliph's chest tighten. "The source of the curse is ahead. The one who bound me into wolf form awaits us." Caliph swallowed hard. She had trained herself to remain calm, to rely on her knowledge of healing and her instincts, but now fear gnawed at her. The shadow's words in the grove echoed in her mind. "The next test will pierce your heart." "I'm ready," she whispered, though her voice trembled. She could feel the pull between them, the bond that had grown over the trials of the forest. Fear and longing swirled together in a way she could not name. Aaron's gaze softened for just a moment. "I know you are," he said, "and we will face it together." The path led them to the ruins of what had once been a grand hall, now blackened by fire and decay. Crumbling pillars leaned at odd angles, and frozen streams of water traced cracks through the stone floor. The air was thick with the sense of old magic, the kind that lingered long after those who wielded it were gone. Caliph could feel it pressing on her chest, a weight that made her heart race. "This is it," Aaron said, "the heart of the curse." Caliph stepped carefully, following his lead. The wolves flanked them, alert and silent. She noticed how Aaron's movements had grown fluid, almost wolf-like in their precision. He was no ordinary man, and she was no ordinary healer. Together, they were a force that the world had not yet reckoned with. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the hall. Shadows gathered, forming into a figure taller than any human, cloaked in darkness. Its eyes glowed with a pale, cruel light. "Welcome," the figure hissed, voice echoing like broken glass. "I have been waiting for the king and his companion." Aaron stepped forward, his chest rising with steady determination. "Release the curse," he said, voice strong. "It ends today." The figure laughed, a sound that made Caliph shiver. "End? There is no ending, only power and sacrifice." Caliph felt a chill. She instinctively stepped closer to Aaron. He did not pull away, but neither did he shield her. Instead, he turned fully to face the shadow, golden eyes blazing. "If you wish to test us, do so," he said. "But know this, we will not break." The shadow moved with impossible speed, sending a blast of cold energy toward them. Caliph barely had time to raise her hands, instinct guiding her as she muttered a healing incantation, her words forming a shield of light that absorbed the impact. The force of it threw her backward, but Aaron was already moving, striking with both human and wolf precision. The wolves lunged as well, teeth and claws flashing. Together, the group formed a circle of defense, strength, and loyalty. Caliph realized that they were more than survivors. They were a family bound by trials, courage, and trust. The shadow roared, striking at Aaron with magical force. He staggered, his human form flickering, almost shifting involuntarily toward the wolf he had once been. Caliph's heart clenched. She could not bear to see him in pain. She stepped forward, placing her hands on his arm. Warmth flowed from her, a steady, calming energy that pulsed through him. "You are not alone," she whispered. "We are here, trust me." Aaron's golden eyes met hers. In that moment she saw centuries of pain, loss, and anger, but also hope, fragile and bright. He drew strength from her courage, from her unwavering belief in him. With renewed force, Aaron lunged at the shadow. Caliph followed, casting protective charms and healing magic, keeping the wolves and Aaron safe. Each movement was precise, practiced, and instinctive. Together they were unstoppable. The shadow faltered, its cruel laughter turning into a hiss of frustration. "You cannot defeat me," it cried. Aaron's eyes glowed brighter, golden light spilling into the air around him. "We do not seek to defeat you," he said. "We seek to end the curse." Caliph's hands glowed as well, the energy she had nurtured over months of healing surging through her. She touched the shadow with light, warmth, and compassion, her heart willing the darkness to release its hold. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The shadow's form shuddered, the energy around it flickering like a dying flame. Then, with a final roar, it dissipated into sparks that scattered across the hall. The oppressive weight lifted. The air was lighter, cleaner, filled with the scent of snow and earth. Aaron's form solidified, fully human once again. He sank to his knees, exhaustion evident but relief in his golden eyes. Caliph rushed to him, pressing her hands to his arms. "You did it," she said softly, voice trembling with emotion. "It's over." Aaron shook his head, a small smile brushing his lips. "No," he said, voice hoarse but steady. "We did it together." Caliph felt her chest swell. The bond they had forged in the forest, through fear, trials, and courage, had held. They had survived the impossible not just because of strength, but because of trust and compassion. The wolves gathered around them, tails wagging gently, eyes bright and alert. Caliph smiled, kneeling to stroke the largest one, the one with the golden eyes. She had saved them once, but now they had saved her in their own way, protecting, guiding, and reminding her of her own strength. Aaron stood, brushing the snow from his cloak. He looked at Caliph, and in his golden eyes she saw something she had longed for: pride, gratitude, and something tender, unspoken. "You have changed me," he said quietly. "Not just the curse, but me, my heart, my spirit. You have reminded me what it means to trust, to care, to hope again." Caliph's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "You changed me too," she whispered. "I thought I was alone. I thought the world had nothing for me, but you showed me I can be more than what I was." Aaron stepped closer, the forest holding its breath around them. He reached out, taking her hand in his. The warmth of his touch made her heart leap. "Caliph, will you walk with me? Not just as healer or friend, but by my side." Her fingers tightened around his. "Yes," she said softly, voice steady despite the tears threatening to fall. "By your side." The golden light in his eyes seemed to glow brighter, and the wolves stirred, sensing the bond solidifying between them. The forest around them whispered approval, the trees bending gently as if acknowledging the union of two souls forged in trials and trust. Days passed as they made their way back through the forest. Each step was lighter, freer, as though the land itself had released its hold on them. The wolves remained by their side, loyal companions, guardians, and reminders of the journey they had shared. Aaron led Caliph to a hill overlooking the ruins of his former kingdom. The sight was heartbreaking. Once proud castles and fields lay in ruin, but beneath the devastation he saw possibility. Rebuilding was not just about stone and walls, it was about trust, justice, and courage. And now he would not be alone. Caliph looked at the land below, then at Aaron. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "Even in ruin there is hope." He smiled, a rare, genuine curve of lips. "Yes," he said, "and together we will bring it back." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of snow and pine. The wolves lay nearby, alert but calm, their presence a reminder of the bond that had begun in mercy and had grown through trials. Caliph reached out, stroking the golden-eyed wolf, and for a moment she saw not just an animal but a guardian, a friend, and a symbol of all they had overcome. Aaron took her hand again, holding it as though he would never let go. "The world is vast," he said softly, "and dangers remain, but with you I feel ready. With you I am stronger than I have been in centuries." Caliph leaned into him, her heart full. "And I feel at home," she whispered. The sun rose slowly, its golden light spilling across the frozen land. The ruins glimmered, not as monuments of loss, but as reminders of endurance, courage, and the bonds forged in fire, moonlight, and snow. Caliph and Aaron stood together, hand in hand, ready to face the world anew, knowing that their hearts, their courage, and their trust in each other would guide them through any darkness to come. And as the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the voices of the past and promises of the future, Caliph knew one truth more certain than any other. Love, courage, and mercy could break even the oldest curses and create something stronger than any magic, stronger than any king, and stronger than any exile could ever be alone. The forest held its breath, then sighed in approval. The wolves padded around them, protective and loyal. And at that moment, in the quiet light of dawn, Caliph and Aaron embraced a new beginning, one born of trials, trust, and the kind of love that could endure any darkness.